Good morning and welcome back, folks. Welcome to this session on MiEnviro portal, the training series. This is part 3, Life After ROP, specifically getting into ROP modifications. We'll really be diving into how we pull those first sessions we did on ROPs together. We've got our ROP in hand, it's issued, and kind of the next steps as we move forward. So my name is Caitlin DeVries. I'm with Eagles Environmental Support Division. I'm the Air Quality Outreach Specialist, and I'll be here moderating today's session. We do have a lot of content to get to again for you today, but before we dive into that content, I do want to cover a couple of quick housekeeping items. Oops, one too many there, clicks. Sorry about that. So I just want to let everyone know that all lines are going to be muted and will remain muted throughout the duration of today's session. And this session is being recorded. We will post the recording to our webpage, hopefully by tomorrow at the latest, and get the emailed link directly out to you all who have attended or registered for the training as well. And this training will also be posted to Eagle's YouTube channel. That way you can go back and take a look at it, revisit it for anything you may have missed if you needed to step away, or share that information with a colleague of yours if they were unable to attend today's session. And last thing I want to cover is that we are taking questions, and I want you to please use the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen in your Zoom toolbar to get those questions to us. And we will be happy to answer as many as we can throughout the session. If we don't get to your question by the end of our time together this morning, we do have your email and we will get back to you directly with your answer. So I have that housekeeping information out of the way. I want to go ahead and introduce you to today's presenter. We are lucky to have Karen Owens, a senior environmental engineer out of our Cadillac District office, on with us this morning. She'll be leading us through the ROP modifications. For those of you who've done ROPs with us before, you're probably familiar with her. She's our modification guru. And we also have Michelle Rogers and Julie Brunner from our ROP Central unit on as well as Dave Bowman, who you may remember from our compliance reporting. If we get any questions on some other Life After ROP questions, and Amy Haywood, as usual, are from our Data Applications and Support, Technical Support unit. So Karen, whenever you are ready, you can go ahead and get us into the content.
All right. Thanks, Caitlin. As Caitlin mentioned, I'm Karen Owens out of the Cadillac District office, and I just want to thank everyone for attending today's training for the ROP modifications. Today I'm going to talk about the changes, what to do for changes that happen between the 5-year intervals between your renewals. So, and how we're going to do those procedures using the MiEnviro portal for submitting those changes correctly. I'm going to start with terminology to make it easier when we're in the system, so you know what I'm talking about. And then we're going to cover the types of changes that can occur between the ROP renewal period with an overview of the basic process for submitting each of these changes. And then we'll go into the system and I'll show you how to use it in the MiEnviro portal. So if you attended the first 2 trainings last Tuesday, these next few slides might look a little familiar, but it doesn't hurt to go over the terminology again, since this is a little bit different than how we have used information in the past. So first, to go over submission, MiEnviro refers to any application or form or report that you're submitting as a submission. And then MiEnviro notifications are system-generated emails. These are not to be confused with ROP notification of changes, which which is associated specifically with the ROP, and I'm going to cover that in more detail in a little bit. But with the MiEnviro notifications, the site users will receive a variety of notifications within when specific functions are completed in MiEnviro. The next term is evaluations. Evaluations are always activities completed by the AQD. This includes on-site inspections, odor evaluations, complaint investigations, stack test observations, and so on. The next one is site. A site is a facility. MiEnviro information is organized around sites in the system. And then schedules. Schedules are reports or forms that are submitted by the regulated sites. So example would be a semi-annual compliance report, a stack test report. Schedules can have specific due dates, or they might be completed on an as-needed basis. And then the next term is correction requests, which historically we used to call these additional information requests. However, the AQD will send a correction request when information in an application appears to be missing or incorrect. So a little bit more terminology that we're going to use. There's 3 different roles that you will see for people who can access the MiEnviro portal. There's a viewer, an editor, and an administrator. The viewer can see all the information at the site but cannot make any changes. An editor can see all the information and can begin to edit submissions. And the administrator can do everything that the viewer and editor can do, but they also manage user access to the site. Certain submissions require a submitter to have certifier status. A form that is required by an ROP must be submitted by a responsible official, which requires the responsible official to have certifier approved status. And I'll show you that once we get into the system as well. Editors and administrators can have certifier status approved. A viewer cannot have that. To become a certifier, you're going to need to send us a paper certifier form with a wet ink signature, and this is the only piece of paper that is needed in the MiEnviro system. This takes place of having to have the responsible official use a wet ink signature on the reports that we historically would be sent to us. So just to recap what I just went over here, you can be an editor without certifier status, and you can be an editor with certifier status. Same with administrator. You can have certifier status, or you can be an administrator without certifier status. Only the responsible official who has certifier status can submit ROP applications or ROP related forms that are necessary to submit to the district office. So when we are in the system, as the form is developed, submitted, and acted on, you're going to see different statuses associated with that submission. The status of the first 3 over here on the left is where the applicant's where the submission is in the applicant's hands, and they will need to submit it before AQD will be able to see what's the information in that form. So we can see when a form is not started. We can see when the company is actually working on a specific form because that status will say draft. However, we won't be able to see like what type of information is going to be included in that form until it has been submitted to us. And then when it's on hold, that means that the Air Quality Division is waiting for the applicant to make some corrections on the form and then send it back to us. So once the Air Quality Division receives the submission, you will see the submission in one of the statuses here in the middle. Pre-processing, that's going to be just a temporary status if you see it at all. A lot of times it's just right after you hit submit, and then if you go back under the submissions, it hasn't quite made it into the in-process stage yet. So sometimes you will see that pre-processing, but it will quickly switch to in-process. And then locked for review, the AQD will lock it for review while we're looking at the submission. So that when it's locked for review, the applicant will not be able to make any changes or revisions. And then the final submission, when it's in the final states, these, if you see it in any of these statuses, you will not be able to make changes to that record. So if it's in effect, that just means that it's active. This is an issued active permit. You also might see the word extended instead of in effect. Extended is your active ROP. However, it's in renewal, it would be currently in renewal and it's past its expiration date, but you have the application shield, and so it's allowing you to have that extended status while you're working on the ROP. With ROPs, you'll also see superseded a lot, and superseded just means that the ROP renewal supersedes the in effect ROP upon issuance of the renewal. So I hope that makes sense. All right, so what I'm going to talk to you today about, we're going to cover 3 different rules in the air pollution control rules. And with each rule that I cover, I'll go into the system and then we'll talk about the next rule, and then we'll go back into the system, and then I'll talk about the next rule and we'll go back into the system. So I'm going to jump back and forth. So I hope it's okay for everyone. I'll try to make it clear. So the first one I'm going to cover is Rule 215, which covers ROP notification of change. What I want you to get from that is these are changes that do not require updates to the current ROP. The next rule that we're going to cover after that is amendments and modifications under Rule 216. So these types of changes actually open the current ROP and will make those changes. And then I'll cover just briefly reopenings, which is covered under Rule 217. And this is actually initiated by the AQD. We will open the ROP and make the and we'll add the updated conditions. So first I want to cover the Rule 215 ROP notification of change. In the new system, these are considered scheduled forms. Just as a refresher, this rule is not changed. Just how we report to the AQD has changed. So to recap, an ROP notification of change are for changes that happen at your facility, but the change does not affect the ROP to where it needs to be updated. An example would be for installing and operating under a new permit to install, or PTI, that is for new equipment where the PTI did not go through public comment. Or if you're installing a new piece of exempt equipment that may be subject to federal regulations. These examples that I just mentioned are just letting the AQD know that the change has occurred and you're going to be operating under this, the new PTI or the new exemption and federal requirements associated with it. And then these changes will be made during the next renewal, ROP renewal. In the system, I'm going to be showing you where to find the form for these changes, what is required in the form and how to submit it, what it looks like in your portal after submittal, and some things to note, since these are for ROP sources, again, the responsible official will actually need to be the one who submits the form. As we mentioned before, an editor or an administrator would be able to fill out the form, and then they can send it to the responsible official who would be able to actually submit it. These forms are submitted and reviewed by the district office. So under Rule 215, notification of change, those forms always go to the district office. So if there's any correction requests after submittal, they would be requested by your district inspector. Additionally, it is important to remember that when the AQD acknowledges a submitted form, it's not the same as approving that form. Acknowledgement is not a compliance determination. It is important to remember the Title V program is a self-certification process, and this is why the AQD acknowledges a form submitted instead of actually approving it. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and get into the system for you. I don't know if there's going to be any questions yet, Caitlin. Are we okay to keep moving along?
Yeah, just before you get into that, there was one question that came and show us the 215 notifications. Um, One question just came in about the certifier request form that you talked about earlier. So there are perhaps people online who have multiple sites that they might be the certifier for, they might be the responsible official for. If you've submitted that form and you had it indicated for just one site, but you need to be the certifier for multiple sites, we can get you that without having to submit multiple forms. You just need to let us know. And to do that, you're going to want to email our eagle-air-myenviro@michigan.gov email address and let us know which other sites you need certifier status form. And you will want to include the SRN or the state registration number in that request so we know which other sites you need to have certifier status approved for. So just wanted to remind people of that. But Karen, I think you are good to get in to show us the 215 form.
All right, sounds good. And as we've mentioned in our previous trainings, I'm just going to refresh my screen really quick to make sure that I'm not logged out. I am using a test environment. This is a made-up source. So things might be a little bit slower, but hopefully it goes fast today. We'll see. But before I get started, I just wanted to show you around a little bit. If you are in charge of multiple sites, you'll have this drop down, a little caret here that you can drop down and you can see all the different sites that you are in charge of. It will typically default to the dashboard, but I'm going to start with the site details here on the left functional area. And when you're in the site details tab, you have additional tabs up top along here. And I'm going to click on contacts. And this is where you can see who we have listed as your site contacts. And you can see who we have as the responsible official. This information has been migrated over from our previous system. So if you see anything that needs to be updated or anything, please let the district know. Also, you'll want to, if you go to the authorized users here on the left, again, the functional area, you can double check to make sure who was listed as your responsible official, that they have either editor or administrator status, and then they have that certifier status approved. So then you know who should be able to submit those forms with respect to any Title V report that's coming to the 8QD. So the next area that I wanted to show is that notifications tab. So these are the system generated emails. This is different than what I'm going to be showing you in a second, but these are the messages that you would get, and if your account's set up to receive both a notification through the MiEnviro portal and email, then you'd have these in email. Otherwise, you have this notifications area here of all the system notifications for your site. And then there's also this little comment box up here. It looks like comment box, but it's actually the notifications as well. So these are the most recent notifications that have been applicable to your sources. Then from there, I wanted to also cover the permits tab over here in the left functional area. So this is going to have your most recent ROP, any active in effect PTIs. I like to use the filter function here that you can type in ROP, and that's going to just show you what ROPs are here. It shows that we have this in effect permit. So this is going to be my active permit that we're operating under. And then it shows that there is a ROP renewal in process. And then, so let's go back up here to the dashboard, which I mentioned before, that this is what it will filter to when you first log on to the site. The dashboard's going to show you items that you can take action on, and it's broken up into little categories. So we've got priority, upcoming, as needed, draft. This to be signed is not associated with our forms, so this will always have 0. and then in process. So under this priority tab, these are going to be all the different actions that it could be a form that needs to be reported to us. It has a due date and the due date's fast approaching. So that would show up there. If it's upcoming, these are our forms that most likely compliance reports that do have due dates and that they're going to be submitted at a certain period of time. And then we have these forms that are as needed. If you need to get information reported to us for your ROP source, this is where you're going to find those as needed tabs. And then anything in draft. So so if this is waiting for the ROP, the responsible official to sign off on a form or package, or if there's some compliance reports that you've started but haven't finished yet, those will show up in draft. And then in process, this is all the information or the submissions that the AQD is currently reviewing at this time. So for this specific area, we're talking about ROP, notification of changes. These are the changes that happen at your facility, but do not update the ROP. So we're not going to open the current ROP. But sometimes sites can have, like, I've seen as many as 100 as needed different forms that companies need to search through, and there is not a filter function on this page. So I like to just do Control F and I can type in notification. I can just start typing that. This one does pull up. There are different types of notification that can happen. Sometimes PTIs can have that as well, but this one pulled right up, so that's perfect for us. And we're going to look for ROP notification of change. So this is the type of form that we're going to want to submit to the district office. This area also talks about what this notification is going to be reported for this ROP, our in effect ROP number, which we saw under the permits tab. And then if you're in charge of multiple sites, it also will show here that what source this is going to be reported under. So go ahead and click begin when you're ready. And this is going to cover instructions of what Rule 215 covers, of what types of changes, and letting you know that this is a change that is not going to revise the existing ROP. So as I mentioned before, these are going to go to your district office. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact your district office. There is an additional links page down here that will open up your the district offices if you have any questions. And then it also mentions what counties that those will include. But we'll go back over to this area. Once I click this begin form entry, we will not come back to this instructions page again until you were to submit another ROP notification of change. So when we open this form, the questions are going to be really similar to what the M001 form, if you were familiar with our previous way of submitting these, were. So all the information's the same. It's just located in MiEnviro portal in a different area. So it's going to start with site information. This is all pre-filled from your source information already. So if anything needs to be changed, please let your district know. Then you have to have a site contact. Anything with the red asterisk needs to be filled out. And there is a contact autofill. So I'm going to go ahead and just contact or add in a contact from my pre-fill. And then when I click this down arrow, it will automatically save this section of this report. I can jump from area to area by clicking on these tabs here on the left-hand side. But if I do go to the different areas by using the left-hand navigation area, it won't save it automatically. But clicking this down arrow, you'll see it says save in progress. And if you aren't sure if it's saved, you can always click the save progress up here on the right-hand side. So now we're on to submittal type. And this form has built-in instructions for you. So it's a reminder of what these rules cover. So Rule 215.1A, this is an operational flexibility change. It doesn't require a permit at this facility. Rule 215.2, this is emissions trading. We shouldn't have any sources reporting a 215.2, but in the future we could potentially, so we do have this available. 215.3 is going to be the most common one. This is typically for that we would have people choose for a new permit to install or PTI that includes new equipment and doesn't affect any equipment that's in the current ROP, or if they're installing a new exempt piece of equipment, you would submit it through a 215.3. 215.4, that is an insignificant change, and this does not require a notification of submittal. So you will not find a 215.4 under the submittal type. 215.5, this is the rule that requires a facility to notify the department if a responsible official or other authorized representative has changed. So you would want to fill out this rule or select the submittal type if you're notifying us of a different responsible official than what we've previously had on file. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select 215.3 notification of change. And we're going to just continue to fill out the form. So then after that, we need to fill in the effective date of change. We have directions here that explain what date to use the effective date of change for. Today, the effective date of change is the date the notification is submitted. So we can go ahead and click today's date. And then the description of change. You'll want to say incorporate PTI, which is for, and then explain what the changes are. Oops, it's just gonna try to be specific of what changes or what that PTI covers. So if it's for new emission units, be specific about what emission unit is. We want to know what, or I didn't want to say incorporate PTI. I want to say, I'm sorry, because we're not changing the ROP. So this is for, we're going to begin operating under PTI, which is what is for this, and it covers these emission units. So be specific. We try to give information this here. If you need more information, like these do expand out if you need additional space, and also if you want to be more need more room too, you can always add it on another piece of paper under the additional information area. So since I'm incorporating a new PTI, we need to indicate whether there's any change in emissions. This is for any increase or decrease in emissions. Since I'm incorporating a new PTI for new equipment, yes, that's probably going to increase emissions at the facility. This is more, this question is more as a heads up to the district office of whether during the next ROP renewal, if this is going to, if the potential to emit calculations would need to be updated or not. So that's sort of what we use that question for. And then if this is a new source review permit to install associated with this application. So if there's a permit to install associated with this, we'd click yes. If there's not, like it's for exempt equipment, then you'd click no. But in this case, we're going to click yes. And when that happens, it's going to have a drop down of the in effect PTIs that are associated. We'll select this top one. That's the one that we're going to include. And then if there's any additional information that you want to submit with this, for instance, if you were installing exempt equipment and you needed to submit a Rule 278A analysis to show how it meets exemptions, you would attach that information here. If there's anything else that you think that would be needed to help justify like why you're able to submit that without updating the ROP, that can be included here. So try to be specific about what this document covers. You can enter that here in the comment function too, and this does expand if you need to. But we'll go ahead and leave it as is and go to the next section. And this is the review section. So now it's just, you can review this information that you submitted, make sure it's correct. And then if you are going to have your responsible official review and submit it, you can, again, save progress. There's two ways you can do it. There is this link up here with, you can just copy the link. And when you copy this, you can just send your the responsible official an email, and then you can attach that link, and then that will, they can pull this page right up. Otherwise, you can go ahead and exit the form. You can notify your responsible official and say, hey, this form is ready. You can go back to the dashboard. It should default back to the dashboard and say, please submit. You can see that I've got a few different things here, but in this case, we are on the notification of ROP notification of change. And so you'll want to just go ahead and have your responsible official continue there. And then they can go right here to this review signing. If for some reason there was missing information in the submittal type or the site information, those would show up red and it would direct them directly to where that error was. And then they could contact the person filling out the form to either correct it, or if they knew the information, they could correct it themselves too. But then that way they can review what's being submitted, and then they have to sign, go through the questionnaires, enter the password. Whoops, I must have entered something wrong. All right. So now this is my confirmation that I have submitted this form and it is in process or pre-processing to head to the Air Quality Division. Some things to take note. I like to, this form that we are submitting has its own submission ID. This is a system generated ID that is associated with any form that is submitted to the AQD. I do like to jot down like the last 5 digits, just so I know. Sometimes there can be a lot of forms in MiEnviro, and that might be an easy way for you to search, just by knowing those last 5 numbers or digits, I guess I would call them, because they're not numbers. But if you, and with Rule 215, notification of changes, sometimes these submittals require the EPA also to be notified. So you are able to print this form here, and you can print it to PDF, and you can include any attachments and send that to EPA. You can view the submission and print that off and send that to EPA. It depends on what works best for you. And I'm going to go ahead and click View Submission just so you can see what the this is going to look like when the Air Quality Division receives it at the district office. So this is the same form that we're going to see when we open it up on our end. And if I click this View Form here, you can see that it's similar to like what it looked like before when we when it was just the review portion. So I'm going to go back to the overview. You can see the status over here on the right is in process. If it was locked for review, it would say locked for review here, and we would not have this option to revise submission. So if there was something that you forgot, you can still revise the submission. We would see it, there would be like under the summary over here on the left-hand side, you would see like revision 1, revision 2. So we would see any revisions associated with this as well. So check my notes really quick, make sure I covered everything that I wanted to. Caitlin, are there any questions that you wanted to cover?
Yeah, we did get a couple of questions. One you answered a bit of is on the submission to the EPA. So a question came in about when some of those notifications need to go to EPA, and you talked about printing that. So just to be clear, our system does not notify EPA automatically. Is that correct?
Correct, yep. So
Okay,
that is still something that the company will submit to the EPA
perfect.
themselves.
And a follow-up to that with doing that, questions are coming in if they, and we may not have the answer for this, if they would still need a wet signature to go along with their submission to the EPA. Is that a question you can speak to?
Um, it hasn't changed. So and I think that we're not in our general conditions, we have changed those in the newer renewals. I think that EPA is accepting all reporting through their SEDRI program. Um, and those instructions are on our general conditions. I'm not 100% sure. Like I don't submit the stuff to EPA, so I'm not super
So,
familiar with how to.
so moral of the story, our system doesn't directly speak to EPA. People should still continue to submit to EPA how they've done in the past.
Correct.
Would that be
Yep.
a safe
So if
assumption?
it,
Okay.
yeah, so if they've signed it in the past and that's how they submitted it, I would continue doing that way as well. And if you've been doing it electronically, you can still continue to do it electronically as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And I do have a couple more questions for you, Karen. One is actually a clarification for me what I spoke to earlier about emailing for additional SRN certification status. I was corrected by Amy Haywood. Thanks, Amy, for pointing that out. We actually do want you to submit the paper form, but you can list multiple SRNs on that paper form to get that certification status for multiple sites if you need that. So please do fill out the paper copy and mail that back in with a wet signature, but you can add and list those additional SRNs that they need to be a certifier form on the same form. So you don't need to submit multiple forms. You can submit one with multiple SRNs. So apologies for misspeaking there, and thanks to Amy for pointing that out. Karen, one
Yes.
more question
Thanks,
to you on
Amy.
the 215s here
Yep.
is we used to have company sites that would submit a letter to us with one form indicating that they were changing their authorized representatives for multiple sites. So maybe they've got multiple sites across the state. So the question comes in is does a 215 change form need to be filled out at that point for each site?
Yes, because our system is a site is based around the site. So we do not have a form that can cover multiple sites and that can be included in multiple sites. So it would have to be each site would need to have that submitted to us.
Okay. So, thanks for speaking to that, Karen. So one kind of follow-up to the EPA question is companies have been using that C001 form, that certification form that we used to have for people. So companies are wondering if we're going to still have that available for them to use when mailing that to EPA. Are we keeping that form available, or will they have to submit that with a
Um,
wet signature differently to EPA?
I I think that that's been removed off of our web page. So I don't think that that is available anymore. And I think it's due because we're not accepting that anymore for a submission. Like any type of submission like this will have to be done through MiEnviro portal. So that's why we've removed that off our website. Um, so I'm not sure, like, if we're submitting it to EPA, if you want to just I'm not sure what they require
Yep.
for that. I apologize, I don't have their like specific regulations of what they require for that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, no problem. And I think Sedgery has its own kind of certification process to get approved in there as well. But
yeah,
that might be a good question to ask the Sedgery folks on submitting to EPA on that. I mean, EPA does know that we're moving to electronic stuff because we communicate with them a lot. But that might be a good question to bring up to some folks at EPA on how they want that if you've been mailing in the wet signature forms. Because Karen did point out our general conditions do say have some changes in there about those submissions via Sedgery. So maybe check that out if that applies to you. So Karen, I think you are good to get back into the next
okay. Yeah, I
portions.
just want to cover one little quick thing before I forget. I did want to show you how that submission, like when you submit the Rule 215 notification of change to the district, you can see it under the submissions tab over here in the left functional area. And again, like sometimes you can have a lot of information in here. So I like to use this filter feature and just type in notify. And then you can see here, there is this notification of change. It is in process. That means it's in the district's hands. Again, there's a viewer revise. If you want to see what this is specifically for, or if you need to make a revision to it. And here is that reference number for that form. So you can like find that those last 5 digits, you know that that is what that reference, or you know that this is the form we're talking about. And then also the form type, you can see that here we have it listed as a schedule. We consider that a schedule. And I'll show you that why it's important in when we talk about our minor or the amendments and modifications and how that will also change. So, all right. So if that hopefully that helps cover those questions, and we can go back to the slides. I also wanted to mention too that we do have they're not specific to the Rule 215 notification, ROP notification of changes, but the air compliance user guide in section 8 is how to submit an as needed schedule, which that is what a ROP notification of change is a as needed schedule form. So just giving you guys a heads up on that too, if you would like to have some instructions while you're working through those forms. So the next area I'm going to talk about is Rule 216, amendments and modifications. So this is an application type form. It's apply and wait, but it's not considered an application. This is considered a permit change form in the MiEnviro system. So just to recap of what amendments and modifications are, we have Rule 216(1)A, I through IV, which is your simple administrative amendments. That's going to be like a typographical error or like a change of ownership at the company. Those would be covered under your simple administrative amendments. These do not go through public comment or EPA review. Then we have Rule 216(1A)(5). Those are your administrative amendments. This is that involves a new source review permit to install, or PTI. So this is a permit to install that went through public comment, and it was dual noticed with your ROP. And so this, when you can show compliance with the new changes in this permit to install, then you can submit an administrative amendment to have those changes, to have that information equipment incorporated into your ROP. And then this type of change would go through a 45-day EPA review. Then we have the most common that we'd use is a Rule 216(2) minor modification. This is to include a permit to install that or PTI that made changes to equipment that is currently in your active ROP or in effect ROP. And then we have Rule 216.3, which are significant modifications. So if they don't meet the first few, then chances are it could be a significant modification. And then with significant modifications, they're more for significant changes to your monitoring, record keeping, reporting requirements, and potentially modify a case-by-case determination. These types of permits do go through the 30-day public comment period and a 45-day EPA review. And then we have our state-only modifications under 216.4. These are conditions that are not federally regulated, mostly like toxic that are subject to Michigan's toxics rules. They will have a footnote 1. And so once these types of modifications, we could make those changes, and then we would just issue the permit. That does not need to go through EPA review, similar to like your simple administrative amendment. So that's just a refresher on what those rules mean. Again, I will show you once we get into the system how to make these changes, and then in order to function, I did want to cover this before we get into the system, but in order to function in the new MiEnviro portal, we needed to update the ROP numbers in MiEnviro. So the ROP numbers might look a little bit different than what you've seen before. So if you have an initial ROP, this versioning is what you're going to want to pay attention to. The initial ROPs will always have a version 1.0. And then once it goes to renewal, each renewal is going to get a version 2.0, a version 3.0, etc. If there's a modification or reopening, that will get a 0.1 or 0.2, 0.3, depending on like what version of the modification or what version of it's been reopened between the renewals. So just so you have a heads up on that. So these are the parts of the process that we will cover next with the with the demo. It should be noted that before you start, if you need to, you might need to submit an off-permit equipment inventory update form. This may be needed if you're submitting a minor modification to have like obsolete equipment removed from your ROP. You'll want to make sure that that your equipment inventory on your master facility inventory has been updated to have that permanently shut down. But the directions to do this are on we do have instructions on this, and I will show you where those are located once we get into the system. So in the live demo, I'm going to show you how to access the application, fill out the form, review and sign, and submit the form. And then what happens after the submittal and how it differs from the last demo I was just showing you. Okay. And as I stated before with the ROP 215 notification of change, we do have instructions for the ROP modification instructions too. These are in a different location than the ROP 215 notification of change. But so let's go ahead and get into the system. I'm trying to find my mouse. All right. As last time, we're still going to stick with this ROP test site 5. But we started on the dashboard last time. However, this time I want to we want to start in permits, in the permits functional area here on the left. And from there, we will want to filter down to ROP because we want to view the permit change forms for ROP. And we need to do that for our in effect ROP. So this is our in effect ROP. If you go here to the right, there's these three dots called the ellipsis, and you click on that, and there's view permit change form. You can only see these types of forms on an in effect ROP. Again, I want to do a modification. There's going to be different options, but just to make sure that I'm in the right area, I'm going to type in mod in this filter function here, and here it is. So again, we're going to be submitting a modification application. This is for ROP test site 5, which is what we are on. It's going to be for this on the in effect ROP, and then it's telling you what the form description is. And so we can go ahead and click begin here. And then there's the instructions again. So it's going to remind you, similar to like what these types of changes are. I did want to point out that we do have a link here. And once you get into this part, if you want to ever come back here again, you'll need to start a new form. So it will disappear on you once you click this begin form. So anything that you'd want from here, make sure you click the links before you hit that begin form entry. But I wanted to show, if you click this renewable operating permits, this is going to take you to the ROP webpage. And I wanted to show you, here is your ROP modification instructions. Here's instructions if you have a correction request and you need to know what to do. Here's how to update your equipment inventory forms and some information in there. And then your initial and renewal instructions as well. So it's right up front, right in the beginning. I can keep this open if I wanted to. I can go back to this tab. But also on this page of this instructions page, we have this additional links, which if I click this takes me right to the modification instructions if I need them. So that's helpful to have open as well while I'm working through this form. Sorry, I just wanted to see what time it was to make sure I'm doing okay on time. So this form is going to look very similar to the form we just filled out for an ROP 215 notification of change. Again, an ROP 215 notification of change will not update the ROP at all. That is just notifying the district office. That is considered a scheduled form. Right now, we are submitting an application for a modification which will update our ROP permit. So, and then, so the forms might look similar, but this is considered a permit change form instead of a schedule form. So it's just different types of form names that you'll come across in the system. So the site information is already pre-filled. Then we have the site contact. You can also go here and fill in the information. And then it's going to check to see. I already have his email in here, so we'll just autofill that. That is set to what your cache is set up to. So if you have the contacts, you can also use this drop down for autofill content that will pull from your contacts of the site. Go ahead and click next submission. Again, that automatically saves your progress. We save our progress up here on the right-hand side as well if needed. And then we're going to have the instructions built in here again. So this is going to be more specific of what each rule is. As a reminder, in case you don't remember which type of submittal, we've got the rules built right in here. So if you already know, you can just scroll down. For this purpose, I'm going to do a rule 216.2 since that's our most common. Then we're going to get this little bubble that pops up based on the type of submittal. It will have different requirements of what the date should be, or what the effective date of change should be. So, so if I'm submitting a Rule 216.2 modification, minor modification, that you can begin construction as soon as you get the permit to install, but you cannot operate under that permit until you've submitted us a minor modification to have that rolled into the ROP. So the effective date of change, we're going to have it for today's date. And then again, this is where, like, if we're incorporating a permit to install, and then be specific of what what that permit to install is updating. Like if it what changes were made in that permit that's going to update the ROP. So because the permit to install or PTI is not referenced in the ROP, we want to be specific so we know what types of changes are going to be made and where, like for what emission units or flexible groups in the ROP itself. So again, we get this question if there's going to be a change in emissions or decrease. We can say yes because we're installing a permit to install. And then again, it's going to, if we select yes there, it's going to have a drop down. You'll see that that permit that we clicked on earlier, that's still in effect. It will be in effect until the next renewal because that is one that we made changes on through that ROP notification of change. This one will be incorporated. So once this modification has been issued, this permit will be voided and rolled into the ROP. Like you'll see that status. This compliance status here is a little bit different than the previous form because this one you have to have a compliance statement with a minor modification. So, or with a modification or amendment. So go through the compliance statements and click yes. If you click no for any of these, you would need to submit a compliance plan and a compliance schedule. However, the source needs to be in compliance when we submit when we issue that modification. So you'll want to double check and make sure it can be in compliance. If you can't, sometimes that compliance can make it so you would need to be have a significant modification, but that is usually not the case. So, but make sure you're reading these compliance statements closely. And then it's this additional information section. So any type of attachment that you think that is needed to help with this form. A lot of times this would be for your significant modifications if you need to update, send in testing that's been done, and that would also be with your 216.1A5s to show compliance with the new permit before you can submit that. That's where you would submit these attachments. And then also if like a 216.1A IV, which is if there's a change of ownership, sometimes you'll need to submit that change of ownership form showing that there was a legal process that took place, and that's where you would attach that information. And you'd be specific about what that form is so we can identify it easily. And then again, review it. Again, you can save, once you're done reviewing everything, you can see this is the contact information. And then what type of submittal it is, the effective date of change, what the description is, and then the compliance status, or sorry, whether there's a change of emissions and the PTI associated with it, and then the compliance status. I didn't include any additional information because I already have this permit to install in the MiEnviro portal, so I don't need to include it as additional information. And then signing, again, you can if you're back at this review section, you can copy and paste this link directly to the responsible official, or you can exit the form and go out. In this case, I am the responsible official, so I'm just going, since we've already covered that earlier, go through my questions, enter my password. Okay, and so this is the submission complete. Again, we've got a new generated form. This is the specific form identification for this. And then you can see if you need to print this for any reason, you can print it if you need it for your file system, or you can go back to view submission. We did cover that in the last one, so I'm just going to go ahead and return to MiEnviro. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go ahead and, if I can get my cursor onto the right computer screen. Having issues with this earlier. Okay. So I'm going to go back into the submissions functional area here on the left, and just show you, these are sticky filters. I typed in notification earlier. Again, there's a bunch of things here. So I want to just check my put in mod, and that will tell me if I've got a modification. And here's that special reference number that I mentioned earlier. And this form type is going to be called a permit change form. So if you ever filter on these, make sure you know what type of form you're submitting. A lot of people try to type in application here, and that doesn't, that won't pull up your modification. So be careful with that. That's why I usually go to form name. If I know it's a modification or notification of change, I will filter that way, filter it down that way. And then when these modifications are submitted, all ROP modifications or initial or renewals will go to Kelly Orant, and then she is our district analyst or department analyst, and she will direct this to the correct person of who would be working on it. So in this case, it would be me. So she would, when she goes into this submission, she will then send it to me. So if you see Kelly Orant come through on your notification that she's received it, you will know, oh, all of those submissions go to her, and then she will redirect it to the correct district person who would be working on that. And so just to recap, I just covered of how we're going to submit an application to update the ROP permit using the modification permit change forms. So Caitlin, while I get back to the slides, are there any questions on this one?
There are a couple of questions in there. First one, maybe before you navigate back to the slides. When you were entering in on the form, there was a spot where you put the effective date of change. So the question came in about that. If it's associated with a new permit to install, should the permit to install issuance date be used for that effective date of change?
No, because you cannot, the effective date of change is going to be when you can begin operating, and you cannot begin operating that equipment until you submit that modification to the to AQD.
Perfect.
So once we receive it, you can begin operating under it. So you'll want to use the date that you're submitting it.
Okay. So that led into kind of another question that came in a little bit more related for that about the question is, can you operate an equipment in a PTI, a new PTI, before it's rolled into an ROP, or do you need to wait until it's rolled into the ROP to begin operating that new equipment?
So majority of the time, as soon as we receive that submission, you can begin operating under it. There are two different situations where you might have to wait, or you can begin operating right away. So under 216.1A5, which is an enhanced PTI is what we call them, or it's an administrative amendment, but it's for when it's for permit to install that has gone through public comment. If that permit to install has gone through the public comment period, you can begin operating under that PTI once it's been issued, since it was dual noticed. So it dual noticed with the ROP and the PTI at the same time during that public comment period. And so you can begin operating right away because you can't submit that administrative amendment until you can show compliance with the new permit to install. But that's only if it's gone through the public comment process that we have. If it hasn't gone through public comment, you need to submit the minor modification before you can begin operating under that equipment. And once we receive it, then you can begin operating under that permit. You don't have to wait for permit issuance. Significant modifications, some of them allow you to operate under, you'll have to read those instructions carefully, and also feel free to contact me if it's going to be a significant modification. Because sometimes based on the changes, you might have to wait until that permit is issued and it's gone through that public comment period, the EPA review period, before you can operate under that permit. But majority of the time, once you submit the information to us, you can begin operating. You don't have to wait for permit issuance. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Karen. And when in doubt, if people have questions on can they start operating, can they not start operating, it's always a good idea to discuss that with your district inspector. Right, Karen?
Yep, for sure.
Perfect. Okay, I think we can get back to the next portion of your
All
presentation.
right. Minimize this. We'll go back to the slides.
Looks good.
All right, perfect. So now I'm going to talk about reopenings, and this is under Rule 217. And so just to recap, the first two types of changes that I covered, one, ROP, notification of change under Rule 215, and then Rule 216, which includes amendments and modifications. Those types of changes are ones that are initiated by the applicant. However, in this case, with Rule 217, this is a permit change form that's initiated by the AQD. So the reasons why we reopen ROPs haven't changed, but for example, if there's a federal requirement or that's been issued, and the ROP has 3 or more years remaining in the term of their permit, then that's a type of time when we would reopen the ROP to get those new federal requirements into the ROP. And then, so if we do initiate a reopening, we are going to send a notice not less than 30 days in advance to specify the reasons why we're reopening it to the company. That notification historically might have came through a letter or an email or both. However, most likely this notice will come through the MiEnviro portal. You'll see it in your notifications that way, and through email. So we won't be mailing any letter to notify you for reopening it. And then to reopen and issue the ROP, the procedures are going to be the same. So we're going to still let the company have their comment period, the company comment on the draft changes, and then it's going to go through the public participation, and then it also will go through the EPA 45-day review. But only the scope of the changes for which the cause to reopen exists, only that is the stuff that can be commented on during that process. So I did want to go, so since this is initiated by the AQD, I wanted to show you like how you know if your permit is in a reopening. So that's what I was going to show you in the MiEnviro portal. So just checking on time, making sure we're good. Whoops. Let me get to the right page. Okay, so this one I'm just going to show you on a different test site. So as I went to sample core number 2 instead of uh, test site number 5. So, and here, let me get to my things to make sure I'm showing you the right areas to go to first. So, all right. So again, this is a permit change form. And if you go to the permits functional area, I don't think we're gonna, you'll see in effect ROP. But for the permit change, we're going to want to go under submissions. Here on the left-hand side. And here you can see that I have submitted a reopening form. It would be under it's going to have a form type called permit change, like we mentioned before. And then the submission status is what's going to be different. Normally we'd see in process, but that's for a form that's been submitted by the company. This one was submitted by the AQD, so that's why it just says received. It's a form that's been received. And you can always go in and see that form that we submitted. It's a very simple form. In view form, it's going to still have that in process status, even though when we were on the other page, it said received. But again, we're in this form that both you, the company, and me can see. If I click this view form here, this is the form that was submitted. So it has the instructions and it's just a reason for reopening. So in this example, it was to remove subpart W requirements and add subpart O to the regulatory changes. So this was one of the examples that we did recently with the landfills. We had to reopen a bunch of landfills and remove the subpart W requirements because they were no longer applicable, and had to add this subpart O requirements. So we reopened those ROPs up and made the changes. So, but as I said before, the meaning of the process is going to be similar to the rest of the ROPs, where when you get to review the draft conditions, and then it goes to the 30-day public comment period, and then they'll have the EPA 45-day review period, and if there's no changes or anything like that, then we'll get then the ROP would be issued, and it would now be the new in effect ROP. And the previous ROP would be turned to superseded. So that's reopenings really quick. Is there any questions for reopenings or other areas?
Yeah, Karen, there aren't any questions in here about reopenings in particular. Those are on the rarer side, but always a good thing to cover in case that does happen to you and you're unfamiliar with it. You've outlined a good explanation for what happens with those reopenings and how the AQD initiates those and gets it going. Yeah, because I guess there is a question that just came in. So does the facility really need to do anything for that reopening once we've kind of opened it, or just kind of wait for instructions from the air quality division?
Yep, they would just wait for instructions. So we're going to do everything on the back end. We're just notifying you that we are reopening it. We'll make the changes, and then once we're ready to submit those draft conditions to the company for review, we'll do that. So that will be like the first correspondence that you would have for a reopening. So
Perfect. Thanks for that, Karen.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we are good to continue on for the moment and get through the rest
Okay.
of the content. Thanks.
Pull my slides back up. All right. All right, so I just wanted to go over to again recap of what we covered today. So we did just do a quick overview of that terminology and status, showed you a little bit of where that's at in the new MiEnviro portal. I showed you how to report an ROP notification of change in the MiEnviro portal, and then how to submit an amendment and modification. And then I just showed you what happens when the ROP is reopened. So just to get that covered.
Great, thanks, Karen. So as we have some time here for some questions, so feel free to put those questions that people still have into that question and answer box. I just want to remind everybody of the resources that we have available online on our MiEnviro portal for AIR webpage, which you can find at michigan.gov/MiEnviro-AIR. We've got our user guides that are general to everything MiEnviro, including things about your account information, general navigation, terminology, those types of things that Karen covered at the beginning. You can also access that directly from your user account up in your right-hand corner. It'll link you directly out to there. Your ROP specific information is going to be on our permits webpage. If you go in through the permitting and click on the Renewable Operating Permit in Title V spot, that'll link you into where Karen showed you those user guides for modifications, initials, renewals, correction requests, those types of things. And then we also have our Life After ROP workbook. That is a workbook that we've had for a while now. It will continue to get updated as we incorporate some of these changes from going live in MiEnviro, but a lot of the information is still really relevant in there. It's got you kind of the walkthrough of what type of modification might you need for the request. It's a really good kind of yes/no flow chart in there that helps you figure that out. So you know which one to submit before you go in and look for the forms that Karen found for us in there. So I did just want to point that out, and I did throw those links to a lot of that right in the chat for everybody. So you can go ahead and access it there. So as I'm waiting for some more questions to come in, I did want to throw up the contact information for everybody if you've got questions. So your general MiEnviro questions can be sent to our eagle-air-mienviro@michigan.gov email address. And if you've got ROP related questions, you can send those to Karen Owens specifically for modifications, or to Julie Brenner, who is our ROP Central Unit Supervisor, which we heard from on part 2 for modifications. So Karen, I think people might be typing some questions in. We do have a little bit of time. So I was hoping that we could maybe circle back to the minor modifications that we learned about in part 2 that happened during renewal. So we touched on it briefly in part 2, but it might be good to just kind of tie those two things together. So if you could show us that just briefly again, and how that works in connection with the modifications and the renewals.
Yeah, let me double check and see if I can find that. I was thinking, so this is test site 2, but I was thinking test site 5 when we were in here. I thought I saw a renewal in here. So I want to go ahead and I'm going to go here on my left to the functional area submissions. And I know that I've got an in-process renewal. And I, again, have my sticky filters on. I'm going to, we can scroll down if we would like, since we know this is renewal, or you can come up here to this functional area and type in renewal. It will show the different renewals here. But I do see that we have this renewal submission package right here. So you can open this in-process renewal up and click on Manage Package. And here, so again, as a refresher to back on Tuesday afternoon, an ROP renewal is a submission package, and this modification while the ROP is in renewal is what makes it a package. So this does not have to be started unless you have a permit to install that happens while you're in renewal, while the ROP is in renewal, and you want to begin operating under that new permit to install. Again, you can't operate under that permit to install until we have received that minor modification application. If it's going to be something that's incorporated with the renewal, you can submit this form for us, and then that will create this modification as part of this renewal package. So it helps with like the public comment process period of this renewal. Um, and you can also begin operating under that modification. So I'm going to go ahead, since I'm in this area, click begin. And this form is going to look exactly like what the form I just filled out earlier. Well, here are our instructions. It talks about when you would need to submit a minor modification during renewal. So this is a little bit different. We haven't talked too much about it, I don't think. Since we have the electronic forms and it's really easy to update your forms on through the MiEnviro portal. If you have any other changes to your ROP that's not through like a PTI, you can just go ahead and update your renewal form at that time versus uh, trying to submit a PTI through submitting the information. This is only for if a permit to install has already been issued for a source. So anything else, you'll want to just go right to your renewal application and update those changes through that, because those changes would be updated during that renewal process. So, but for here, we'll go ahead and click the begin form entry. Again, there's the ROP renewal instructions. This will cover how to fill out this minor modification application as well if needed. And then you'll want to enter, let's just use the most recent one that I just used. So, and then the effective date, we want it for today's date, or if it's and then what permit we're going to be, again, be specific about what changes are made, so we can make sure those are caught in the ROP renewal. If it's updating, if we need to increase emissions or not. That was really weird. Sorry. I think I have a button pressed somewhere where it's and then we'd select what permit we're going to be installing during the renewal process. And then you have your compliance status again that you'd want to click on, or add any additional information. So sometimes if it's in renewal and you're incorporating a new PTI, if it is increasing the emissions, like you might want to, if you already have those emissions justified through the permit to install process, you might want to just add them right here. So then that is updating that potential to emit calculations. So it might spear off the district inspector requesting that at a later date if needed. So if you need to add a, once you submit this form, if in the future you have another permit to install, you would ask the district to unlock this submission, because it should be locked once they receive it. And then you can always add a new minor ROP modification in the future. So that would be it's the same form, but it's going to be for a new PTI. So there is a way to, you would need to just keep adding onto this form with each PTI that you would get in the future. It wouldn't, it doesn't become available multiple times under that submission package. So I hope that that's a little bit clear. I'm going to delete this one so I can go ahead and show you how it works for the whole submission package once we get through this. I'm going to go ahead and review it again. And since I am the responsible official for the site, I'm going to go ahead and sign this. And if you have somebody who submits it thinking they can submit it, it will still submit to us. But if you're not the responsible official, we will send it back to you as a correction request and saying that the responsible official needs to submit this form. And so I don't know what I entered wrong. And I don't know this answer, so it's going to give me,
Passwords are always the bane of
I
us, right?
know.
But I guess it's a good reminder if you do get locked out of your account because you don't have your passwords correct or you forgot your security questions, you can email our eagle-air-myenviro@michigan.gov and we can help you with getting resetting those security questions. But it looks like Karen remembered it, so
Yeah, I
excellent.
did. Knew I would. I don't know what happened the first time. Again, when you're dealing with packages, that is the most important time to note the submission form number because there's two different forms in a submission package and they're going to have different submission um, identification numbers, that system generated digits that are associated with it. And so it's really important to keep those straight. So just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. So you could view the submission if needed, but it's going to be similar to what the review was. So I'm going to go ahead and return to my MiEnviro portal. And it's going to bring me back to this package form page. So here we see this pre-processing status. So that means it's like in the works to get it sent to us. I'm going to go ahead and refresh my screen and just see if it changed to in process yet. And there we go. So it's in process. So now we know that that has been submitted to the district. This is the package number. And then we have, and then I will show you under the submissions tab, that package number will have different forms. So if I go back to the renewal and manage package, oh, there are two different forms associated with this. I'm just trying to, I want to view or revise. Let me see if I can do that. If I view this form, I'll show you the different form numbers. So this is what the air quality is going to see. So we're going to have this package with this submission ID number. This is going to be for the minor modification. And then if I go back, and I'm going to view my renewal, this is going to be the renewal form that was submitted on Tuesday. And again, this has a separate submission ID number, or form number. And then this is, you can always go to view form here. So this is going to be the actual renewal documents. So if there's anything that needs to be revised, there's that revised. If it's locked for review, that you would need to request from the district or whoever's working on your ROP to unlock it if you need to update anything in there. So does that help, Caitlin, for what you were looking for?
That does, yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. It's definitely something people may have to do, and we didn't have quite enough time to cover that on in part two. So thanks for covering it here, Karen. So there's
Yeah.
just one kind of follow-up question to that. So people there's a question coming in about do they have to if they have to make that type of change right now, would they have to use that minor modification during renewal form right now, even if they
Oh,
submitted the renewal application prior to going live in MiEnviro?
yeah, that's
Um,
a good question because I meant to cover that and I forgot. So, migrated renewal application forms do not have this capability. So how we're instructing companies, if your ROP is currently in renewal and you need to submit and you have a PTI that's been issued or there's changes that you need to make to the renewal, we're requesting that to be done through a minor modification application form. We are able to do that to connect those records on our end. Um, so we can still get it to go through the public comment process together. But that's how we want it to be done right now, since we can't do migrated renewal applications this way. So this is like moving forward, but unfortunately, we're not able to do the migrated forms like this. So I hope
Great.
that helps.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Karen. I know we are at 10:30 and we do still have some questions, so if people have to sign off, that is totally okay. We're gonna stick around for just another minute or two to get to a couple of the questions here in the chat. As a reminder, this is being recorded, so if you ask this question and you have to jump off, you will still have it recorded and posted when we get to it. So Karen, question is about submitting the minor modification. So when you selected, you were selecting in the drop down on that form, the for 216 specifically,
Yep.
the permit to install number. So a question is, what if only one of the emission units has been installed and is ready to operate? That's part of that permit to install. Should someone wait for the entire permit to install, to roll that entire permit to install in for all the emission units to be installed and ready to operate?
That's a business practice. So it depends on when you need to operate. So if you want to operate any equipment in that permit to install, you need to submit the minor modification application. So, but if you are okay, like getting that ready to operate, and then you want to work on the other equipment, and that's not, and get that ready to operate, and then you want to operate everything at once, then later you can wait till everything's installed if that's what you want to do. But that depends on if you want to, where you want to begin operating. If you begin operating that first piece of equipment, you need to submit a minor modification at that time. And then all the equipment included in that permit to install will be incorporated through that minor modification. If in the future that other equipment never got installed and it's not ever going to be installed, you can always send another minor modification later requesting that equipment that never was installed to be removed. So it's not a done deal. And even so, like if that equipment gets incorporated and changes have to be made and you got another permit to install, you can always submit another permit to install later down the road to make adjustments and get that equipment updated again. So it's to make it a little bit flexible. I hope that helps answer that question.
Yeah, thanks for that, Karen. If that person still has questions on that, definitely reach out to your district inspector or to Karen about your situation to make sure that you're doing the right thing, because we definitely want people to do the right thing in terms of submitting the paperwork before it's being installed. So I'm sticking with that theme here a little bit, Karen, on the next question. So the question, and I don't recall this, and maybe you don't, maybe we have to get back to this person on this, but they're wondering
Okay.
if there are, if there's equipment that can't be operated until the paperwork is submitted, so for a modification, are there special conditions in the permit to install that tell you this? Or how would they know that they need to get that paperwork in and to roll into the ROP?
Usually that's going to be in the cover letter that the permit section sends to the to the company. So when they issue that permit, there's directions on the first page of that that will state that. And then there are rules and our general conditions too that cover that information. So
Awesome, Karen. Okay, so last question I'm going to get to before we wrap up for the day is, do you have to submit a modification for every permit exempt change?
a modification, no. So but if you have multiple things at your company and you would want to submit an ROP notification of change, because we will not. I'm thinking of all these different scenarios in my head right now, so
Yeah,
that's why I
no,
had to stop for a second.
that's totally okay.
But you would want to submit exemptions under your Rule 215.5 or your Rule 215 notification of change form, which is an off-permit change. It's not going to update the ROP renewal. And if you have 5 pieces of exempt equipment and you want that to be installed and you're notifying us that you're installing this, that's perfectly fine to include all of those on one form. Just know that the district inspector might say, hey, this looks like one activity. you need to show me that this is not going to be above significant level where you might need a permit to install or PTI for all of this equipment being installed at once. So those are some things to think about with exempt equipment. If there's federal requirements associated with it, that's something that you would need to let us know. A lot of people will say, hey, I'm installing this engine, it's exempt under this exemption rule. Like that's all described in the description portion of our form. And then under the attachments, they say, and is subject to the RISE Act 4Z, or it might be subject to the New Source Performance Standards 4J or 4I, you know, so, and then they'll say how they're complying with it. And they're allowed to operate under those federal regulations until the next renewal when that district inspector or the ROP central unit would incorporate those conditions into the next renewal. So that's sort of how that would work. But you might have to show that you don't need prove that you don't need a permit to the district, and you would do that through that additional additional information attachment box.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying that, Karen, and answering all of the questions today. I want to thank Karen for the great presentation and
Thank
everybody
you.
for sticking around for a few extra minutes to get your questions answered. Thanks everybody for joining us for this MiEnviro portal series. We hope to see you back at additional trainings. And again, we'll get this recording out to you in the next day or so. I hope everybody has a good rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, Caitlin.